Good evening. I will now call the October, wow, it echoes, sorry. I will now call the October 10th, 2023 meeting of the Ben Lapine School Board of Directors to order. I'd like to introduce our participants this evening. To my immediate left, Vice Chair Marcus LeGrand, Director Amy Tatum, Director Keena Chadwick, Director Carrie McPherson Douglas, Director Cameron Fisher, and Director Shirley Olson. Next to them are our student representatives, Emma Hayden from Ben Senior High School and Wes McGovern from Summit High School, from the Student Voice Council. To my immediate right are Superintendent Steve Cook, Deputy Superintendent Laura Nordquist, whose daughter may have won Educator of the Year this morning, and our board clerk, Janet Bojanowski. And I am Melissa Barnes-Talakia, Chair of the Board. We have Erin Trimble and Hannah Westfall joining us for ASL interpretation, and Spanish interpretation of the meeting is being provided on our BLS School Board YouTube page. I will now move into and invite you to join me with the Pledge of Allegiance by standing and taking off your hat. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll now review the agenda. Dr. Cook, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Fellow board members, are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing no requests for changes, the agenda stands as noticed. I will make one note. We tried something a little bit different. So for any board member who submitted questions based on the packet, our team, the cabinet, is going to work to incorporate your questions. If you don't hear your question answered, please ask it, okay? And they will be answering it. Okay, thank you. So we will now move into item number 4, which is our district recognitions.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Talakia. I'm excited to kick this meeting off with our Champion for Students Award. Standing where I'm supposed to. All right, caring, compassionate, proactive, a true advocate for students. These are some of the qualities used to describe this month's Champion for Students. Christina Ebner, will you please join me up front? And just out of curiosity, raise your hand if you're here for the board meeting. Raise your hand if you're here to support Christina. That's what I thought. All right. Christina is a third grade teacher at Lapine Elementary School, where she has taught third or fourth grade for all of her 11 years in Ben Lapine schools. The first fourth grade class she taught are now seniors and will graduate this June. That's super cool. Christina is here tonight because of who she is, what she does for our students, both in the classroom and in this community here in the southern part of our school district. Listen to what our Lapine Elementary principal, Megan Sylvie, shared with us in her nomination of Christina for our Champion for Students Award. She's sitting right up there. There is no doubt that she genuinely cares for all students. She not only cares deeply about the students in her classroom, but she always goes out of her way to build relationships with all students here at Lapine Elementary. She is proactive in all that she does. She takes the time to sit down with all students and gets to know them not only academically, but personally. Christina is the teacher who attends dance recitals, baseball games, football games, and so much more. If her students are doing anything that she can support them in outside of school hours, she is there. She not only does this for current students, but she continues to support former students, including attending all Lapine High School graduations to cheer her former students on in their next chapter of life. Students who have endured trauma need patience, understanding, and a person to believe in them. Christina is that. She believes all students can learn, and she will do whatever it takes to make sure all students have what they need, and will do what is needed to meet those as an individual. She wrote a lot. Christina not only does what she can for students, she also participates on many district adoption teams. She has a voice for our students and teachers. She knows what our students in La Pine need, and she wants to be an advocate for them. We are so very lucky to have Christina at La Pine Elementary. She is well loved in our community and by our students. Our staff is grateful for her caring nature, her drive, and her compassion for students. Clap. So on behalf of the Ben Lapine Schools, our champion for students for the month of October 2023, Christy Ebner, in recognition of how deeply you care for our students, present and past, and show you care by being there for them in the classroom and beyond. Thank you for being a strong advocate for students and teachers alike, and being a role model who embraces compassion and understanding. Ben Lapine Schools is proud to count you among our champion for students. Clap again. Would you like to hear from her? Yeah, we want to hear from her. All right, we're gonna have her give us a speech.
I really appreciate Miss Sylvie nominating me. Thank you, and I've been really, really blessed to have her in actually all of these 11 years, as well as Patrick Flanagan in leadership, and I'm really grateful for them. I'm grateful for the team that I work with at La Pine Elementary. They're like no other, and Rosalind as well pour their hearts into kids every single day that need those people to pour their lives into, and I'm just really grateful to be a part of that, and I'm excited to see my first class graduate that I worked with and what they're going to do with their future, and hopefully change the world and help other kids who are dealing with trauma and situations that we handle often. So I'm really grateful to be a part of South County and Ben Lapine School District, and look forward to all that is ahead for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Is it okay to hug you?
Yeah, it's fine. Thank you.
Oh,
Do I have to smile? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. All right, that's it for our recognitions for tonight.
We will now move to item number 5 on our agenda, which is our Student Advisory Council report, and I will be handing it over to Emma and Wes.
Hello to you all. My name is Wes McGovern. I am a senior at Summit High School. The Student Voice Council currently has 12 members working together. In September, we discussed recruitment and getting new members for our council, as there are currently no members to represent Caldera and only one for Ben Tech, La Pine High School, and Realms. So obviously we are working to get new members from these schools. There is an online application for students to complete, which requires a staff recommendation, and this form has been sent to the administrative staff at the respective schools, who have been asked to share with staff to recommend some students that they believe to be a good fit for this role. We currently have a few applications and hope to have full representation by the next board meeting.
Hi, my name is Emma Hayden, and I am a student at Ben Senior High School. This month, the Student Voice Council leaders from each high school have been meeting together at lunchtime to learn more about one another and to meet with our administrators in a small group setting. It was great to learn more about my team members and chat with one of our administrators. Mr. Hutter let us know that as we were working on projects, he would happily provide some background information, but certainly allow us to make our own decisions and opinions. One of the big things that came up was the first period rotating schedules and the way that it's affecting the students. It was informative to learn about my team about this, and it has evolved into something more this council is working on.
In a similar lunch meeting that we had at Summit with our administrative staff, we talked about how to promote the Student Voice Council members to be more of a resource and opportunity for members of our schools to connect with us. So we have plans at an assembly that's coming up, as well as potentially setting up a mailbox that would be managed by Jackie, where we can get feedback and work that into our discussions. So we're not isolated from the school. And at the last SVC meeting, we had representatives from Bend High, Summit, Lapine, Mountain View, and Realms. The group as a whole discussed the first period rotator change to the schedules. We had an opportunity to talk about the pros and cons from our perspective and how it works in each individual school. It was interesting to learn that there was quite a bit of diversity on how it's enforced and policies that have fallen into place at different schools. However, the general consensus is that it is not working for most students. It's certainly hard for students to understand, makes it harder for the after-school programming, clubs, and jobs that students may have. It's also hard for students to take buses to school, especially at the schools where they don't allow students in if they don't have a class. And it's also a challenge for students trying to take college courses. This is certainly something that the council wants to learn more about the rationale for the change and learn if this is something that we can affect change for and if it is worth taking on for an SVC project this fall. We want to make sure that district leaders know that we are here to help provide the student perspective as big changes like this are being discussed in the future. Thank you for this opportunity and thank you for having us here today.
Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled that we had our first Student Voice Council report. Really appreciate it. We will now move into public comment. The board and district leadership value communication from students, families, staff, and community members as it helps us guide the work of Bend Lapine Schools. Public comment is just one vehicle. The public is also welcome to email us, to submit written comment, as well as requests to meet with individual board members who may make themselves available via phone call, Zoom, in-person meetings, etc. That said, I want to remind us that this is a meeting of the board in public, but it is not a meeting with the public. It's a meeting for us to conduct district business. As such, the board will not be responding to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person to follow up with you. We will now open for public comment and hear from stakeholders on topics in the order that they appear on the agenda. Our policy is typically to allow 2 minutes per speaker for a total of 10 minutes per agenda item and 10 minutes for non-agendized items in total. A timer is provided on the large screen above us and in Zoom to ensure every speaker receives updates during the presentation on remaining time. If the speaker goes over time or if the speaker's message is not in adherence with our policies, for example, being personally directed, abusive, discriminatory, repetitive, or off topic, I may ask the speaker to cease and terminate their privilege to address the board. At this time, excuse me, I have to pull up my other piece. At this time, we will be hearing from Sherry Smith. Sherry, I invite you to come up.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Sherry Smith with Field Mortgage, and I'm the branch manager on our Central Oregon offices. And I'm here just to provide some insight on home affordability and how that equates to education and the income of everyone that actually earns their income from education and even in the community. So if you were to go—
Sherry, I'm sorry, and can we reset her time or adjust the timer? Can you get a little bit closer to the microphone?
Yes.
Or speak a little. Thank you.
Is that better? Okay. So if we were to go ahead and take an example of the area median income of Deschutes County, this year that's $104,000. So a family earning $104,000 with today's price points and today's interest rate environment using an FHA loan on Oregon Bond, which is a subsidized program that allows for today a 6.5% interest rate, that would allow a family to buy a $475,000 home, equaling out to being a principal, interest, taxes, and insurance and mortgage insurance payment of $4,300 a month. Sit with that for a second. You're a first-time home buyer. That's overwhelming. So if you're earning $45,000 a year as an educator, then at that point, you're able to buy in the same calculation a $250,000 home. So we just have a huge disconnect with what home affordability looks like And it's not just interest rate driven, it's price driven as well. So please reach out to me if you have any questions, as we're passionate about providing home ownership and education, because in order for people to stay in our communities, they need to have a home and families to be raised in. Thank you.
Thank you. That was our only public comment for this evening. Public comment will be referred to the appropriate staff member and then followed up via email. We will now move to consent for action. I will entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Director Olson has moved. Vice Chair LeGrand has seconded. Are there any requests to remove anything from the consent agenda? Hearing no requests for any changes, I will call for a vote. All in favor? Aye.
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 Motion passes unanimously. We'll now move to consent for information, and I will hand this over to Superintendent Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. As you're aware, we have started using the consent for information section to include information that we want to make sure gets out that we are not required to communicate, but wish to communicate. There are 3 things in there. The first that I would like to call attention to are the follow-ups to last month's public comment. We still have 1 item that's pending on that. Look forward to a meeting that's scheduled for October 30th to get more information, as we're scheduled to meet with the Latino Community Association on that day as a reference point to follow up with one of our public commenters. The second thing I'd like to talk about is an administrative regulation that is up for adoption, KCA-AR, which is specifically to volunteers and criminal history records check. There are some grammatical corrections, and the removal of the COVID-19 vaccination or requirement for an exemption documentation that if you require, that was rescinded by the state in the previous year, and so we are removing that from policy as well for our volunteers. Because that's a change in the law, we're not going to send that out for public comment. We're just going to adopt that immediately to make that change supported by regulation. And then the last thing is one of our executive limitation reports. It's Executive Limitation Report 4.1, which is legally required policies. I'm excited to send this to you in a new format. You'll recall we've modified the way that we are presenting this information. This is our very first new format, and the way that we are reporting on the actions we took on those legally required policies. Would love any feedback if any of you have thoughts on how that presentation is going. So thank you. That's it for consent for information.
I will share the feedback that I thought it was incredibly comprehensive. I appreciated seeing the magnitude of work that was done last year on policy. And I also really appreciated the approach of separating out some of our executive limitation reports so that they can simply be in writing to us and part of the board packet, so that we can focus our time with the public talking about teaching and learning. All right, speaking of which, we are now going to go into section 9A, our South County report, and that will be led by Scott Olszewski. Say it again. Olszewski. Scott Olszewski, our Lapine High School principal, but also our South County director.
Thank you. Are there slides? Okay, great. Otherwise, I'm really winging it. Thank you. All right, well, I am Scott Olszewski, Lapine High Principal and South County Director. This is the South County Spotlight for this year. I was here 11 months ago. I think it was a snowy night we were here. It was my son's birthday. I had to get going right after I was done, but that is not the case tonight. Thank you. Do I control the slides with this here? Great. Yes. Okay, so just a little overview for the record. Who is South County? So the 5 schools south of Lava Butte. Is that better? You can hear me better now? Great, great. Okay, so 3 Rivers, K through 8, Roslyn Elementary, Lapine Middle, and Lapine High. All right, so a little spotlight on each of our schools. So 3 Rivers, the K through 8 Otters. So the big focus there has been teaching the expectations, and they've gone with a framework that is kind, safe, and responsible. Keep that in mind. You're going to see some consistency as we go through here as well. They had a great Title I information night where they did a scavenger hunt for people to come throughout the school and to tour. They handed them a scavenger hunt to do there. They did an ice cream social. 670 people in attendance at 3 Rivers. If you've been in 3 Rivers, you know that that's a crowd. That's a crowd in there. So that's really great to see that level of community support there. They have a great reputation for many years at 3 Rivers School for after-school clubs and programs, and like so many other things during the pandemic, a lot of that faded away, and they've been bringing a lot of that back so far. The skateboarding, the gardening, and the running club are all back. But it's really important because of where 3 Rivers is located, just south of Sun River, and that they're really trying to just provide a lot for the kids to do there because they don't have as many options as they might in Bend, or in some cases even as much as here in this area here in Lapine. So those after-school clubs and programs are a great community connection for our kids. They have an active student council, and they also have what's called KTRS News, so the student news done by students, which I thought was pretty neat. Roslyn Elementary, the Rockets. You'll notice it says teaching the expectations again as a big focus, right? All of our schools, and when we get together as the task force members up here as well, you'll see that that is a real focus. Modeling and teaching all of the routines and consistency, common language, and expectations with staff. So really just looking to be able to provide that academic environment where we're teaching not just the math and reading, but also just how to do school. They had something really neat there called Mindful Music, which is daily music after breakfast, and that's part of a regulation routine, listening, stretching, and breathing to start the day. The more we learn about brain science and kids, and just routines for adults as well, just so important to regulate before we go into the day, so they're doing a great job with that. In the hallways and other common areas, anecdotally from their staff, we're hearing just such a positive and intentional change in the atmosphere. I'm sure that's related to the teaching the expectations and also helping kids to regulate. Classrooms, hallways, cafeteria, playground, it just feels good over there. Great job, Roslyn. Lapine Elementary, LPE, the Panthers, teaching the expectations, and you notice that language of kind, safe, and responsible. Right, so I have a long history in being part of positive behavior interventions and support, what we call PBIS. This reminds me of so much work that we did in this school district around PBIS, because not only do we teach, but then we also recognize, and they've got a token economy system there called Panther Bucks to acknowledge and recognize students when they're meeting expectations. They have growing enrollment. As you know, Lapine is growing. And they brought back monthly Panther assemblies, another one of these that was a great tradition that is back. And the Portland Trailblazers recently visited as part of the Rip City Rally. They stopped by LPE. They also have a 5th grade leadership team, and they did a teamwork challenge with visitors from OSU. Very nice Panthers. Lapine Middle, also the Hawks, just as we are here at the high school. And you will see teaching the expectations, school-wide and classroom norms, explicitly taught. They added culinary back. Whenever you talk to kids at middle and high school and you ask them what electives would you love to see, if you don't hear culinary, then you're not talking to middle school and high school kids. They love culinary programs, and they have an excellent facility over there for culinary. So they hired a teacher to do that. Every student at that school will get 9 weeks of culinary this year. They, along with the high school, are part of the Sources of Strength. They had a leadership group that met in here with our high schoolers for a daily workshop. And honestly, the middle schoolers really just shined. It was awesome. I popped in here for a while, and they were so impressive. It was really awesome. Summer school this past year was really neat. So they had a theme of be where you are, and everything that goes around that, both for internally but also externally. They did field trips. They went to the Fort Rock Homestead, Think Wild, Sun River. They had a fun day in Sun River, rented bikes. They went to Shark. And then also they worked on school skills, math and reading and projects and electives. If you go into the hallways at Lapine Middle, there's several bulletin boards that just have such a great record of the summer program they did this year. They also had Web Day, where everyone belongs. 20 eighth grade leaders welcomed all sixth graders, and anyone with any experience with web at middle school knows how powerful that can be. That's our Hawks. But these are also our Hawks. We also at the high school, we really focused again this year on teaching the expectations, school-wide and classroom norms. We added an education program, dual credit with COCC. So we have a teacher that teaches Ed 101A, and students get high school and college credit for that. Second semester, those students will do a 60-hour practicum in our 2 elementary feeders and our middle school here in Lapine, and get out there and work with teachers. I talked about Sources of Strength. Our leadership group did that as well with the middle schoolers here. And we also added this year a Strive Alternative Ed classroom. So we have our intervention and support and credit recovery options for all of our students here at Lapine High, something we haven't had before. That's a great resource for us. So we're really trying to make sure that we are providing a lot of variety and options for kids to get a diploma. Our goal is a diploma for every student. We don't want to lose students to the idea that they cannot earn a diploma and they need to take a different path. We want to provide more pathways, and Strive Alt Ed's a great way to do that. We're also right now in the process of getting ready to hire people for our Nighthawks after school program. So Lapine High and Lapine Middle will be running 2 to 3 days a week from 4 to 5 o'clock. And after school tutoring, study space, makeup work, planning help. For us, it will also be credit recovery for some of our students who have fallen behind on credits. And we've worked with Lapine Transportation to actually have transportation provided so that no student has to have a barrier to the after-school program due to lack of transportation. Go Hawks. Little summary of who is South County. It's Lapine and the surrounding area, and it's also 3 Rivers South, that area around Sun River. We know that small schools are really great for kids, and then we've got great links between the schools, and especially celebrations. I will just point out we had the Lapine All Schools Assembly last Friday, so both elementaries in Lapine in the middle were all here. Cheerleaders got a bunch of us to dance and embarrass ourselves in front of everybody, and had some great games and activities. It was a blast. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Scott now that he's sat down? Scott, I do have one question. About how many students from the middle school participated in that summer school program?
Did you have 40-something students? 42. 42.
Cool. And same question for the Nighthawks program.
That we don't know yet because we're just in the process of hiring, getting it going. Yeah.
Thank you.
Great.
Scott, would you introduce the principals who are here with us tonight?
We have Deborah Boudouin from Roslyn right there. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I get that wrong all the time. Megan Sylvie from Lapine Elementary. Brian Barringer from Lapine Middle. Scott Olszewski from Lapine High.
I was going to wait until you got a little further. But no, I just thank you so much. That was really great, and it's always wonderful to hear about all the amazing things going on down here. I guess just as long as we're here, a little more ad hoc, is there any other obstacles or strengths that you just want the board to know that Lapine is facing, or anything or South County, anything else that you would like us to know while we're here and listening?
Well, I gave a bunch of examples of added resources. You know, when we talk about having an after-school program or all-day alt-ed and summer programs, I would just say resources are so important. You know, I've been in this school district, I think it's for my 18th year now, and my 4th school, and we do have unique needs in this community. You know, and besides just at the school, I mean, my own family, my kid participates in sports here, and we shop here and try to get to know the community. And there are unique needs here, and we have a lot of creativity, and we have a lot of staff members and teachers with a lot of energy and passion, but resources sure go a long way along with energy and passion.
All right. Thank you so much. We will now move to item number 9B, which is our Culture and Climate Task Force update. And Superintendent Cook will start us off.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. If you recall, this was a very interested topic, both from the board's perspective, from district administration's perspective, and from our staff and our community's perspective. And I think it was about maybe this time last year, maybe just a little later last year, in which we were working on some agreements and really decided, okay, let's pull the Band-Aids off and let's really dig in and see what we could figure out. And I think we have a group of about 37, if I'm not mistaken, folks that are participating in this. District administration, building administration, teachers, staff from all of our schools participating in what are the most pressing issues. And when you ask that question from 35 to 40 people, you're going to get a lot of issues. And one of the things I'm extremely proud about this group's work is that they have said, okay, we've got to get reasonable with our ask, and we've got to get focused on what we want to attend to. And it's getting from a list, a whiteboard, if you will, of things that we wanted to take on to let's get a prioritized list of things that we feel like we can have impact in right now, and things that we could in a short term and maybe even a medium kind of length and a long-term length start focusing on, and bring that work and attention to that work and elevate it up to the point where potentially, as we were talking about the possibility of local levy, that some of this might actually be assigned to aspects of a levy spend if we were to go in that direction. And so I cannot tell you how proud I am of this group's work and how well they've done to get us kind of organized. I think we've met 7 times. Does that sound about right? 7 times? And we've got the pleasure here to have our South County membership of this. I think all of them are here. I'm not sure about that. That are people that work in this community are going to do a presentation on the entire work of the Culture Task Force. And so without further ado, let me stop talking and have our Climate and Culture Task Force folks come on up, introduce themselves, and talk about the focus of this work over the last about 6 months. Thank you.
All right, so I'm Trevor Arsenault. I'm the Dean of Students at Roslyn Elementary. When the task force started last year, I was actually a teacher representative, as I was a 5th grade teacher at Roslyn. And then right behind me is Brian Berenger, the principal of Lapine Middle School, and Amanda Johnston, who is a Title EA at Roslyn, and then Scott Olszewski, yes, Lapine High School.
There was a listening session in early 2023 where staff indicated the conversation about, or initiated the conversation about what is taking place in our classrooms and our schools. The common theme was centered around distracted and disruptive learning. The stories that were shared were emotional. I think a quote from Eric Powell, who is our Assistant Director of Student Services, said it best. Our teachers just want to know what the protocol is, what are expectations of the district to address these behaviors. A lot of times, these are skills that students need to grow and build, and that's our job as educators. But it's really difficult at times to do that in a classroom. So how do we work as a team to help these students develop these skills, but also keep our teachers and the other students safe at the same time? The district understood that there was no quick fix for these issues, and so the task force was formed. The task force is a collaborative effort that started off with 35 members, and it consisted of certified teachers, classified staff, building administrators, district administrators, and an outside facilitator.
My name is Brian Behringer. I'm just going to talk to you about what exactly happened when we were having these meetings with the task force. So our group that was created, we'd meet with Whitney Swander, who was our facilitator. Whitney led the group through a process of breaking down potential barriers between task force members that stem from different roles, experiences, histories, and identities toward the goal of honest sharing about the challenges we face. We had some in-depth conversations and activities that helped us define the challenges clearly and distinguish by different levels, and then brainstorm solutions. The group winnowed down the potential solutions and next steps and drafted recommendations, and task force announced our recommendations. I'm very thankful for this opportunity to be a part of the task force, being a second year employee to Ben Lapine. I'm from Denver, Colorado. We face very similar issues and really never got the platform to collaborate with a large group of stakeholders and try to create a collaborative approach that was going to be best for everybody. But it was a great experience.
A couple examples just from Lapine. So as I said so many times before, and I'm purposefully being repetitive on the teaching the expectations and that tier one, right? The program that we have for all students. All of our schools focused on that very heavily. And I know that district-wide, that was our focus this year. I just know we did a great job at it here in South County. Lapine and Roslyn Elementary using that same framework, responsible, kind, safe. Lapine Middle School, responsible, respectful, safe, right? So extremely similar framework and language. Lapine Middle and Lapine High School, we really use very consistent language and framework for identifying and teaching the expectations. So beyond maybe just the few words and then having it all fit into that, it's when we teach about behavior in the hallways, or we teach about what's expected in the restrooms, or what's expected when you enter the classroom and the teacher's doing the warm-up. We tried as much as possible to use the same exact language so that down the road, we're going to really benefit from kids going through a system where they've got the same language and model. So we all did very extensive teaching and orientation in September. Brian and I we took a couple pictures here because as we went through Lapine Middle a couple weeks ago, we just happened to be meeting over there and discussing some things, and it was like, these exact posters could go in Lapine High. Some of the language is word for word. We made sure to just share and save the same language. And on your way out, you could probably even see the posters that are in our lobby here at Lapine High. And you'll just see it's just very consistent about how we're doing this. Whose slide is this?
So earlier this summer, during our admin meetings, we looked at making things more even across the board, that everybody's on the same page. There was workshops with admin around what the task force was recommending and building that accountability framework. One of the big things we heard was that feedback loop from staff members going up and also coming back down, and keeping that communication fluid. So it's not stopping anywhere, it's continuing. One of the big things, like Scott was mentioning, school-wide norms across the whole district, at least at the elementary level. I think middle and high might have the same, of being safe, responsible, and kind, and then a little flair for the school if they wanted. So
Any other comments anybody wanted to make about anything happening at your school or that you've seen? Thanks, Trevor.
I think one of the big things, again, I was a teacher last year as the teacher representative. The really neat thing is it seems like everyone's voice is part of the discussion and valued. It was really nice to talk with district level admin and let them know what's going on in our schools and bring light of some stuff. And I've heard some change from day one, so.
I'll just chime in and like he said, it's not just something that administrators rolled out or staff. It was a very collaborative approach, and when making our school norms, we took in staff voice and student voice. So it was kind of a combined vision, which I think is making a big difference, especially when you're hearing that language used by students and by staff members. I'm hoping we're moving in the right direction.
We know our work is not done with the task force. In fact, it's just beginning of building that foundation for us to continue the work. And we had broken into 3 subcommittees as well. We have the stakeholder and mapping committee to make sure that we can hear voices that we need to hear and have the appropriate time to respond. We have a messaging committee, and we have a monitoring and evaluation committee. We look forward to continuing the work to make learning environments that are safe and healthy for all.
Thank you.
I want to thank everybody who has volunteered for this committee. I'm just going to say this. I'm in school right now, and people are going to hate hearing this, but I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh yeah, in our class we were just talking about the importance of shared decision making, et cetera. So I just really want to appreciate you. I had a question on that stakeholder mapping. Sorry, I lost my question for a second, and then, but on stakeholder mapping, has your committee talked at all about at some point community involvement, like bringing in the parents around the shared expectations, et cetera, or families? I'm just curious. Sorry, Megan.
Pushing button. At this point, we've gotten together one time, and really all we did at that point is brainstorming who we want as stakeholders and who we want input from. And so we haven't went further with that. But yes, community was definitely one of those stakeholders. Yeah.
Thanks.
You started to get to this a little bit, but I'd just love to hear a little bit more about, is it working? What are you seeing? What are you hopeful about?
I think we're just at the beginning. There's discussions that are happening, so is it working? I think we're on the right process. One of the big things we talked about with goal setting is there's the immediate, the 2 to 3 years, the 3+. So we're putting the groundwork now, and I'm hopeful and I'm inspired that change is coming. We just can't do it right away, just with certain things, so.
Can anyone answer how the students are adjusting to the changes to the norms that you are creating by trying to build progressive relationships with them? How's that coming?
I've seen a lot of great responses. I think it comes back to that consistency piece, and we have become predictable for those students. And as we all know, that students respond well to predictability. Another piece that we had talked about with the task force with our expectations for elementary is using student voice. So they get to have a say in what's happening in their classroom and what they want that classroom to look like. And I think that that's a really important piece of it.
I just wanted to mention our last site council meeting. We have a very active group at the high school of parents and staff and community members. And the comment was made by one of our parents who's parent of two kids who have gone to the school, one here now, one who graduated, who said that what she's hearing from her daughter and the friend group of really a group of very high achieving students is just how different it feels and how it feels like such an academic environment, and they can notice the difference. And when I hear that, I just feel great about that, because I know that's good for all kids wherever they're at. But I especially always feel good that, you know what, you can come to Lapine High and you can be a high achiever and you're going to get yourself a good, solid academic environment. So it just made me very happy to hear last Wednesday.
Thank you so much. We are going to now move to item 9C with Leah Bibeau, our finance director, sharing our first quarter report. I take that back. It's going to be led by Brad Henry, our CFO, COO.
Sorry. Thanks, Melissa. Unfortunately, Leah couldn't make it.
And it's going to be the same thing, Brad. We're going to need you to get close to that mic.
Okay. How's this? Better? All right. Unfortunately, Leah couldn't make it this evening, so you're stuck with me on her report. I want to touch on a few items that in your packet you'll find the report, but there's a few items that have changed since the adopted budget. Every year starts with what are we bringing forward from the prior year, and so you can see the beginning fund balance. Excuse me. You can see the beginning fund balance, and in June, our last report from 22-23 showed that we expected the last year's ending fund balance, this year's beginning fund balance, to be a little bit higher than the adopted budget. We think it's going to be a little bit higher than June. Our auditors are at the district as we speak, so the independent audit is underway, and so we have closed the books, but there's always that chance, always that risk that there are some adjustments. We don't believe there will be. So this is where we believe we will start 23-24 is what you're seeing on this financial statement. A couple of the other large items. Recall that we adopted the 23-24 budget at the $9.9 billion state school fund level. After we adopted that, the board adopted that budget, the legislature came out with a state school fund of 10.2. So you'll see an adjustment in the state school fund line item for that increase. So we are including that in this. A couple of adjustments, other adjustments to the state school fund are related to enrollment. Two of those items. One, we've talked about the Youth Challenge program and the change in structure for funding. That does impact our funding, but it also impacts our expenditures down at the utilities and purchase services line item. So we are decreasing the state school fund for those students that we're no longer funded for, but we're also decreasing our expenditures on that line item down below. So that's built into the state school fund line item. And then in addition, we have less enrollment than projected for 23-24. I guess the good news on the enrollment is that because the projected increase in enrollment was so small coming into 23-24, we're not going to see the full impact of that lesser enrollment because the state has what's referred to as a hold harmless portion of the formula. You're funded based on the higher of the prior year or the current year. And so our current year is going to fall below the prior year, so we're going to be funded based on last year's average daily membership, or ADM. So we're going to see some impact, and that's built in here, what we believe it's going to be. But the rest of that impact will likely show up in 24, 25. So we won't see it this year. We'll probably see it next year. The only way we wouldn't see it is if 24, 25 enrollment ticks back up, and so it would be higher than this year. But we'll likely, when we get to 24, 25 budget, we're likely going to expect it to tick down to this year's enrollment. We won't build in an increase, would be my guess, but it's a little early for that. Let me make sure I hit all of the notes. Reserves. You can see in the statement the beginning fund balance essentially matches the ending fund balance at this point, and that's largely because of the increase in resources. But remember that we don't have agreements with any employees at this point, and so those will come at some point, and so we'll build them in when we have that information. This is based on the salaries and other compensation items are based on the adopted budget. So there's, that's what we know at this point. Any questions?
Thanks, Brad. I think it's really important as a board that we continue to really understand the budget and the budget implications, not just for this year, but forward-going years as well. And so while we're positive right now in some areas, being able to understand that better. So for example, with the state school fund, that is an increase that we expect we will now have this year and for the next year. Is that correct?
So the state school fund is the state budgets on a biennium basis. And so the 10.2 is over 2 years. So this year we're receiving 49% of the 10.2, our share of that. And next year it'll be 51%. So there will be a little bit more in year 2 based on the 49-51 split. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Okay.
So we have some consistent increase there. Conversely, with ESSER going away at the end of this year, how much will not be coming into the district due to ESSER ending?
So currently we are, that's a hard one to answer. So we're currently using, I want to say, $4 million or so to fund staff. We may end up using a little bit more than that in this year. So ESSER is, we have to spend it by September 30 of 24, and we'll make sure we do that.
Which gets me to the piece, which is ESSER, like you just mentioned, is funding staff right now. And I think I've heard a number around like 30 staff members.
It's probably closer to 40.
Closer to 40. So we have about 40 staff members that are being funded by a revenue stream that is ending at the end of this year.
That's correct.
Okay. And again, I just want us to be able to know what money there is. And so then my last question is, when we passed our budget, we passed it with a 2% COLA built in, is that correct?
Yeah, it was the equivalent of 2% for all
Okay.
employees.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. This is really helpful. Being new to the board, I'm still trying to kind of wrap my brain around reading these statements, but can you give some examples of the all other salaries?
Yes. So included in that would be things like extra duty pay that, so for certain employees that are doing stuff outside of their normal contract. There's additional pay, stipends. There's also things like extended days for counselors come to mind. We pay for additional days for the school year for counselors. That would be included in here. It would also be things like substitutes that the district hires that don't come through the ESD. Most of our instructional subs come through the ESD, but we do hire subs for transportation, things like that. It includes summer help. So if you think of our landscape or mow crew, that would all be included in there, as well as overtime for any staff that would get overtime.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Brad, were we going to get a final enrollment report that went in October 1st?
I can. I'm sorry I didn't bring that today. I can tell you that we're, in addition to the youth challenge, we're down a little more than 200 students from the projection.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I would say that we're hearing a lot of the same from other districts around the state, that they're down. There's a few that are up, but I would say the majority we're hearing are also down.
Are there any other questions for Brad? All right. We will then move into administrative policy and regulation report, and I will turn it over to Dr. Cook.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. You'll notice in your board packet that there are two policies that are up for consideration. The first one is IGAC-AR, Treatment of Religion in Schools. A couple of things to note in this policy. The revisions provide guidance when recognizing religious customs or beliefs in school settings, with some language updates to reflect our current district policies and processes regarding student speech and dress, teaching and learning, how we handle celebrations, decorations, and we've added some language specific, or excuse me, we've removed some language specific to employment because it was in this policy, and we've moved that into GBA-BP, Equal Employment Opportunity, which now, if you recall, was actually changed to a board policy that the board adopted sometime back. Additionally, our other policy up for review and consideration this month is JB-AP, Educational Equal Opportunity. This includes updated policy language to align with House Bill 3041 and House Bill 2935, which includes district requirement of the complaint process and how we communicate and access that complaint process. We will, if you recall, we always allow those to be available for public comment and public review, and that process will continue, and you can track and monitor how that is going on our website, which is now pretty front and center and available for folks to monitor. So glad to stand for any questions, and if I can't answer those, then I'll grab somebody that can.
I just want to make the comment, I did share this with Kenzie before, but in email, but I just really want to appreciate, we've heard a lot of feedback in some of these areas and really felt like our policy provides, these revisions really provide our community with a lot of clarity on our policies. So thank you.
And I hope that our community engages and gives us that feedback. I'd love to see what we get if they take us up on that offer.
We'll now go into the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Chair Barnes-Delakia. I have just one item for my superintendent's report tonight. It's a little bit longer, but I did want to take some time and talk a little bit about our facility use practices. There was, if you recall, there's been some interest recently. We have a church accessing one of our sites and renting one of our facilities, and there's been some definite community interest in that. And so I just wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about how a group, either a local group or a non-local group for that matter, could access the ability to utilize our facilities. And before I go into detail on this, I would like to make it clear that we see ourselves as a community partner. We see ourselves as stewards of community resources when we talk about our schools and our buildings, and we approach that work that way. And so, so let me just start. Ben Lapine facilities are available for both local and non-local organizations that are willing to follow our policies and rental guidelines and must go under contract. And when doing so, they have to provide a certificate of liability insurance, naming Ben Lapine School District as an additional insured to gain access to our facilities. In our policies, and those policies are KGA-AR and KG-AR, we prioritize how we would like to give access to our facilities. And I would say that the majority of our asks are typically for our sports fields, but not just sports fields. There are other things that we get asked to use for. And there's 5 different priorities. The first one, our school programs, always takes first priority. Second priority are park and rec youth programs like after-school care, youth sports, Little League, things like that. Third priority are in-season youth feeder programs for our high schools. And fourth one is in-season non-district youth programs can access our facilities. And then we go into what is our lowest priority, which is everything else that folks that would want to access them. And so you can see that we tend to prioritize kind of relative distance from from the school affiliation. Now, when you're talking about our non-athletic areas, it's very, very simply just 2 things. Is it affiliated with a school? Number 1, yes, first priority. If it's not affiliated with a school or outside organization, they'd be the second priority. And I had one person ask me, what would it take for us to decline somebody from using them? And there's really very few reasons. The first one is that the facility is already in use, which is actually a big deterrent. That's one of the biggest issues we run into. It's already being reserved, and it has an outside organization that's already getting it. If we cannot get staffing to supervise and do like the cleaning for that, or if we have some area that's undergoing maintenance or construction, or if we have a field that we are saying should no longer be used because of wear and tear, those are the main categories. We make some money off of this. We don't make money as far as a enterprise kind of thing, like the amount of resources that people are getting and what those costs are pretty much a wash. So we're talking between maybe $200,000 and $300,000 a year total expenditures, and that is we pay essentially that in covering the costs, and it doesn't even necessarily consider if we have to like reseed fields and things like that. One thing that you should know that is important is that schools that are availing their facilities to rental organizations that are paying the fee, schools receive 25% of that income, and that's kind of a burden of use kind of payment, and schools use those funds in very creative ways to add programming and to support other things. For auditoriums, it's 35%. Because it is a much more intensive ask when that happens, and there's typically some expectations with running audio video, just like we're dealing with here tonight. And my gosh, I can't even, when you think about all of the different, I'll just list a few: Parks and Rec, Campfire, Boys and Girls Club, Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, Little League, soccer, Apex Soccer, Timber Soccer, wrestling, club sports, youth choir, youth orchestra, rugby, lacrosse, ultimate frisbee, track, volleyball, community groups, Latino Community Association, Fathers Group, Aloha Friday, American Red Cross, Assistance League of Bend, Bend Police Department, Sheriff's Office for Canine Training, Deschutes Library, COCC, Deschutes County Girls on the Run, HOAs, churches, camps, Neighbor Impact, Rotary Club, music and drama things, Beat, Cascade Horizons Band, Central Oregon Symphony, local dance company. I can go on and on and on. This is, I would tell you, we've done a lot of digging into this. I would say it's one of, and I don't have data to support this. I'm just going to say this. In 2022, when I went out and did kind of the informational campaign when we were talking about the bond, the folks that access our facilities see them as community assets, and they, in turn, I think there is a elevation of support, because when we ask for bond support, people know and recognize they're going to get an opportunity to potentially access that, and the fact that we treat them as community resources, not as school district resources, I think is a huge benefit to the community. And secondly, I believe that it does build positive goodwill within our community. And so I'm glad to answer questions. I did find out, I said, how many churches have ever rented our facilities, and we don't know how many forever, but we do know at least since 2009 when we really started tracking the data that we've had 8 churches utilize our somewhere in our district the facilities that we've had for accessing, and have done so. And to date, we haven't had to kick out, if you will, any church that I'm aware of in that record. So glad to answer questions. Glad to talk more about that if you have any questions.
I have a question. What would happen if space were leased to a group where there's a clear, the values were very clearly contrasting those of the Ben Lapine School District?
So right now, that's the only limitations we put are those first criteria. Is the facility available? Do they meet the liability, the insurance, and those expectations? And do they meet the terms of the contract? There is not a value statement right now on the contract. And that is, if we're interested in something like that, like a value statement, that's going to put another threshold for access. So.
Just for the public, because I get this question a lot, is it a school level approval decision or a district level approval?
It is a district level approval decision.
Any other questions? All right, we'll move into the board chair report. I have 6 items to report on. Sorry. I'll start with my smaller ones and end with the biggest one. First, I wanted to let the board know that we had a successful visit by Senator Wyden. On Monday, he came to Ben Senior High School. I orchestrated this with his office, and then thank you to Scott Mabin, who orchestrated things within the district, but we had our Deschutes County health partners and our Healthy Schools partners, and then students who are enrolled in and taking the course and working in our Sources of Strength program, so that Senator Wyden could hear about our unique 50-50 partnership with Deschutes County to fund what I call Tier 1, but what health professionals call population level service, but having preventative and harm reduction services in our schools for our students. And so our goal or our ask was to highlight this for Senator Wyden. There is a bipartisan Safer Communities Act that is providing funding for the next 5 years. We want to get on the radar. We asked that CDC funding be increased on the public health side to the 2010 levels that it previously was, so that that side can afford the partnership, but also that on the school sides, we continue to provide better opportunities for innovative partnerships and funding for those partnerships in our schools. So that was number 1. City district update. On a quarterly basis, Steve and I meet with Mayor Melanie Keebler and City Manager Eric King. We were able to share with them our work with our Student Voice Council. They're very interested in perhaps tapping into you, and they just wanted to really hear about your work and the formation there. They also talked about MUPTI, and we'll be hearing about that in our November meeting. They've come to a strong interagency partnership. And then we talked about the local option levy and whether that would be in competition with anything that the city has on the radar. There isn't anything, so that was great news. And then finally, we talked about interagency collaboration around our houseless population. That recent point-in-time count had close to 200, I think, students, youth that are are houseless in our community. And so how can we work together in our agency, both in terms of prioritizing our students and families and getting them housed in places that transportation departments can reach, and then what to do when we can't and how we might collaborate to get to our kids that are off the grid. Any questions on either of those two? That's my politics section. Okay. Sorry, OSBA. Actually, I'm going to skip. It wasn't that insightful. We had board chair leadership. Good enough. School adoptions. I'm behind on that. The spreadsheet has your name next to all of your schools. I think most of you have them identified. Carrie was easy because she had 9 schools in her zone already. So we only had to add 1. Let me double check tonight, but you can go into that and you'll be able to see your schools. Going back to that, our houseless population, I have been in communication with Mickey Dirting at the City of Bend, as well as Sandy Schmidt within our district, our McKinney-Vento advocate, really trying to see how, again, how we can work in our agency and collaboratively to make sure that all of the kids in our community are able to get to school. So that's an ongoing piece of work. And then finally, I wanted to provide a bargaining update because in May, we saw the BEA proposal and the BLS proposal, and then we had a summary that was produced for membership, and the board had access to that summary. Since then, we have had in September and October a second round of full proposals. In between that, we did a bunch of tinkering with different articles. We were able to reach an agreement, but we had 2 full proposals this fall. We still have a pretty big gap, and I'm just going to walk through a couple pieces so that you understand them. Salary is first. We have a step and column. The step and column doesn't change. Our step and column is designed so that for every year of experience, you go up in salary 2.5% per year. And then for every 15 additional credits you earn, you go up by additional 4.1 to 5.1%. It varies. Right now, where Ben Lapine is in the additional COLA, and in addition to the step and column, is 4.5% in the first year and 3.5% in the second. BEA, in their proposal, whoops, I didn't put in the final numbers. Oh, crud. I'm going to have to pull those for you. The last proposal was 13.76 and 14, and that came down to 12.8. 12.26. Thank you. Nice to have your money people. Okay, 12.26. In terms of the school year, Ben Lapine has offered an additional 2 days, so taking the school calendar to 192 days. Those 2 days would be planning, which would be half directed professional development and half work time for teachers. Those are included in the COLA. So they're included in that 4.5 and 3.5. And so that you know, each additional day is 0.5, roughly about a 0.5% salary increase or COLA. So you would kind of, if you're looking at it as not included, you would kind of take those COLAs down by 1%. Conversely, with the BEA proposal, it's up to 194. That includes 4 holidays that they're asking for, and those are not included in their proposal. So those would be additional 6 days. 4 holidays plus 2 planning days. I have them down here. I have a big down here. So that's an additional increase on top of the COLA. In terms of leave and holidays, this is a pretty significant one. The district is status quo. Currently, we provide 10 sick days, 2 personal days, and 5 holidays for BEA. For BEA membership. The BEA proposal is asking to increase sick days by 5, personal days by 2, and 4 additional holidays. Right here I have the ratio for you. Teachers have 5 holidays, whereas BLAST has 9, which has been a subject of contention. I did a kind of rough average because BLAST also works many more days in their contract, and so it's roughly teachers have like 1 paid holiday per 38 days work, and by my calculations, BLAST has roughly 1 per 28 days work. The significance in the additional sick and personal days and holidays is, or excuse me, sick and personal, is that in the proposal they also ask for those to be paid out if not used at their per diem rate. So again, that in total provides 11 additional days, which is roughly equivalent to 5.5% additional. In terms of the monthly benefit cap, the current BLS proposal is at $1,538 for the first year and $1,578 the second year. What our finance team did was look at the actual MOTA plans and what the cost of increase was, and so the increase in the cap reflects the increase of the cost. So it's basically steady state for an employee. The BEA proposal is at $2,102 for the first year and then $2,174 for the second. And just so that you can know, I took a look at the MOTA plans so that we'd know better, like what that actually covers. And I'll get a copy for you. I couldn't find the picture I took, but I'll get it and send it to you. But it fully covers any employee at the top level plan, MOTA 1. It covers an employee and a spouse member completely at Plan 3, so MOTA 3, and it would cover an employee and their spouse and children at MOTA Plan 4. And so that's roughly where those are. And then obviously employees have the option to pay additional. So for example, if you wanted to cover yourself and your spouse at Plan 2 instead of 3, you would be paying $28 more a month. So just to give you kind of, there's lots of variables there. I'll get you that spreadsheet. Planning time. Currently we have a daily prep for our middle school and high school, and that is the same in both proposals. For elementary school, BLS is proposing staying with 270 minutes, and the BEA proposal is asking for 500 minutes. If 500 minutes were provided, that would require either increased staffing or increased class size. Then finally, tuition reimbursement. Tuition reimbursement is currently being offered, is currently agreed to on the amount, which is taking it from 50% to 70%. BLS is making that increase, going from 50 to 75% with a paired ask, which is that courses not just relate to a person's endorsement, certification, et cetera, but they're actually from an approved program. So BLS is asking for quality control, essentially, and is willing to give 75% tuition in return. BEA would like to maintain teacher choice. That's important to them in that. And right now, teachers are able, as long as it relates to their area of certification, area of placement, or pursuit of an administrative degree, they can be reimbursed regardless of what program they're taking. So those are the key differences there. I'm open for any questions you have as we move through bargaining.
Melissa, and this may be more of a question for Dr. Cook or Brad. If we said yes to BEA's current proposal, what does that affect us in terms of budget? Like, what does this cost us?
You mean if we just said we agree to everything?
Yes.
Well, that's not bargaining, but...
No, it's not bargaining, but I think it's a fair question because we've had lots of people in the community reach out to us, and from my position as a board member, we are responsible for the financial health of this district.
Gotcha. Yeah, if we were to have, say yes to everything that's being asked. I think the ask is somewhere in the line of our first initial estimate was around $70 million.
Okay, and again, for the public, please repeat what our total budget is.
220, 225, I think, is that? 215, 220, somewhere in there.
Okay, yeah, because that's a pretty big chunk of our budget. So if this were something that we said yes to, where's the 70 million that we would cut to make this happen? I mean, I think we have to have that conversation, and I think the union has to have that conversation and acknowledge what that means for our schools, and I also want the public to know what that means for our schools.
Yeah, I mean, what is that? You know, if you do easy math and let's say it's 210, that would be a 33% increase in total expenditures. That's far beyond the amount of new dollars, if you will, that we would be getting. Or, you know, I think we built the budget back when we were first talking with you all about 9/9. We built a $5 million carryover that we were to make the 2% offer. That $5 million was coming out of carryover or those funds to make that offer stand. And so the math on this just won't work. And I think the theory that would be is, especially if we were going to be, like if you put caps, like Greg Colvin says this very well, you can pay more people or you can pay people more, but you can't do both without a new revenue source. And so either salaries go up and down or the number of people go up and down. And so those two things are related. And so I think, I don't know if I can answer your question, Director Tatum. I think if it were just the math of how do you accommodate $70 million, it's you'd have to have an equivalent, a number of cuts to accommodate that. But if I think the proposal had numbers of caps or caps on or targets on class size, and if they go over that, then we're paying additional funds, and so those two things don't work together, and so I think that's the challenge.
Yeah, and you know, I think one of my sources of frustration is that it doesn't seem like people fully understand the difference with school funding versus private corporations. You know, I fully support our labor movements across this country, and with UPS workers and auto workers going after corporations that have taken advantage of them for years and have pocketed money and bought stock back and given their CEOs millions of dollars in bonuses. And I think it's really hard when we support our schools and we want there to be high quality education and we know we have to pay for it, and the union deserves these raises, let's be honest about that. But we aren't the ones who determine the amount of money that we're getting. And the amount of money that we're getting comes from the state. And I am frustrated that our state elected representatives have come out and run victory laps over $10.2 billion that amounted to a service cut. We needed 10.3 to maintain what we were doing last year, and we did not get it. You know, someone that I respect a lot said their favorite leaders are those that punch up. And forgive me for a form of violence in my language, that's not intentional. But what I mean by that is the union punching up to district administrators when we don't have $70 million and we have no way to raise that revenue and there's no secret pot of money. How do we do that? Because you deserve it. And the way I think we do that is by pushing the state, sitting outside of Salem, demanding that from our state elected representatives. When they come to you in solidarity, where are you asking them to pay for this funding for you? Because you deserve it. Full stop. But the district doesn't have the money. And I really want our community to be thinking about these questions. And as we think about going for a local levy, which I think we need to do because that is the lever that we have as a board in a district to give our schools the resources they deserve. And I really want us to think about this in terms of what these asks. Not only is it the effect on labor, but how is this affecting our students? Because are we going to have to cut EAs? Are we going to have to cut programs? Are we not going to be able to have summer schools and other things that our kids need? And that's not to say that our educators shouldn't be able to buy a home here. You absolutely should be able to. And the cost of that and the responsibility of fixing that is something that I just don't think we as a board can fix without money and investment from not only our community, but also our state.
Thank you, Director Tatum. Are there any other questions or comments?
I was going to ask a similar question, but just from a slightly different angle that I think is still important, which is at the BLS, at the current offer on the table, number 2, now that we actually know what our budget is, right? Because when we started this whole process, we were projecting. Are we using every available dollar at this point to put towards this proposal? Is this the best proposal we can offer without making massive cuts?
A couple of qualifiers in that question. I think the first thing I would start with is the first offer included $5 million out of fund balance to be able to make that work. That's one-time dollars. And so it's all perspective at that point. And so when you ask, is this the best without making massive cuts? I mean, you know, a massive cut could be the single one position that we cut that person was expecting to keep that job. So I think that's a tough one to answer. I can tell you that there are some things that are going to be coming one way or the other, because we already mentioned it tonight, that there are some positions that are in ESSER that are no longer, and those positions are going to have to go into the general fund, or those positions are going to have an outside resource of revenue that we don't currently have to be able to be sustained, or we have to make some adjustments. That's the current state. We've lost, over a period of about 4 years, we've lost an enrollment of about 1,100 or 1,200 students. And that's a trend that's happening not just across the state, but across the country right now. There's lots and lots of things that are in flux. And for us, it isn't just the state formula, it's also our enrollment. And so when ADMW comes down, then our funding comes down. And so, you know, the potential, like, what does this mean if we were to go up from the current numbers? You know, like, there's 2 extra days there. Do those 2 days have to stay? That's a bargaining discussion that I think we have to be careful not to have here, but at the bargaining table. But you know, I still fully believe, and don't for 1 second believe, that the union is not bargaining in good faith, and the district is bargaining in good faith, and that I think the 150-day timeline expires next week, but I have no intention of doing anything but continuing to meet at the bargaining table, because I do feel like there's a solution ahead of us, and there are going to have to be decisions that are made that could include some challenging things that are going to be in our future. What's our top dollar without making cuts? We're making cuts. If we made no changes to salary, never did a thing, which I'm not suggesting that's what we would do, we would still be making some cuts because we're overstaffed right now. We held staff through the process, and as ESSER is coming down, so will our staffing be coming down. And so I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, I think so. I mean, I think the basic answer is yes, and maybe even offered a little bit more than we really can, given the cuts that we know that is coming. So I guess I'm just trying to understand, I mean, again, like Amy, I want our teachers and staff to be able to live and thrive in our community. I think many people in the community are frustrated that we haven't been able to get a contract yet. It's no fun working without a contract. It sounds like Amy's question to you was, do you have an idea of where we could find $70 million? And your answer was no. I guess my question as a board member is, does BEA have a proposal for where to find that $70 million? So I'd be interested in the answer to that question. And otherwise, I think similar to Amy, I hope that we can come to an agreement based on the money that actually exists at this moment, and then turn our attention to fighting like hell for a local levy and more state dollars. But we need to have a realistic conversation. And so if there are ideas for how to find that $70 million, I'd like to understand them. If there aren't, I'd like to see us focus on advocacy.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments?
Yes, I have a question. If breaking down, if salary, and I think it's pretty clear, the money's not hidden somewhere, right? But looking at year, leave and holidays, benefits cap, planning time, tuition reimbursement, are there, without getting into too many specifics, are there particular areas that are more doable in flexing or meeting closer, to moving away from the money? I guess that's a question that I have.
Yeah.
Are there more
I think
more
that's
malleable?
a question that we haven't talked about in bargaining yet, so we can talk about anything we've already covered at the bargaining table, but we can't talk about anything that we haven't, and we haven't had that discussion yet at the bargaining table, so we can't have it here.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But every one of these rows costs money. That's
Yes.
like there's none of these that don't cost money.
All right, thank you. Stay tuned on the advocacy pieces. I will mention that, so right now advocacy, like I mentioned with Senator Wyden, is happening at the county and state level to bring resources into our schools through our Healthy Schools Partnership. We are actively exploring a local option levy. I also have had conversations with OSBA around advocating at the state level for, and I have found a model actually from Marguerite Rosa at Georgetown, but looking at some advocacy there around adding some form of cost of living adjustment to the state school funding formula based on what communities like Ben Lapine are experiencing. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for this board to advocate. We already have started, and then we'll deepen and broaden with the rest of our community going forward. All right, then we will move into board comments, and we will start with Director Olson.
Nothing tonight except that it's really nice to be down here and to have our local folks here. So thanks for being here.
I just want to thank the Lapine team, the presentation, and I visited some schools today and just felt really welcomed and super positive energy. And I know there are lots of challenges, of course, like anywhere, but particularly some of the challenges families face in Lapine. But I could still feel a lot of great energy and a lot of really hard work going into this community. So thank you.
Yeah, just two quick things. One is really excited to have my 10 schools and to start scheduling those visits, so expect a scheduling email from me soon. And also just really want to make school visits as meaningful and helpful to school staff as possible when board comes to visit. So always interested to hear school staff and teachers and principal ideas about how to make those visits as meaningful as possible for you in addition to us. And then just I was able to start my regular volunteering in my 2 kids' classrooms. And in particular this morning, I was in a 2nd grade classroom at Pine Ridge, and the teacher is just so masterful. And I was just in awe, like every decision and word that she said for an hour was clearly intentional and masterful. So just always want us to remember that at the end of the day, it's about our thousands of individual teachers and staff. And I just have so much appreciation for the art and science that you all put into it.
I just wanted to say thank you for providing an update on bargaining. I'll speak personally for myself, and I think others on the board also feel the same way, that otherwise we wouldn't be up here. You know, I've said it before that teachers and nurses, I firmly believe, are pillars in our community, and I see when I hear about teachers working like 12-hour days to meet with their students and families, mostly in conferences, it's just one example of how above and beyond our teachers go. And so I will say personally for myself, this is a really huge struggle to, especially to have gotten to know a lot of our teachers. And like you were saying, the remarkable work that they do in our community. And I will also say that, of course, we want to share with the public, what's going on with bargaining. And like I said, I really appreciate this. And I also just wanted to add that, obviously there are multiple sides of bargaining, and that we heard from one side tonight. And I know that there are also opportunities to hear from the other side. But we are, well, again, I'll speak for myself, that I am here because teachers are critical in our community, and really the foundation of our democracy. So this is not easy, and I can only imagine how even more not easy it is for our teachers. And I'll stop there.
No comment tonight.
Two things. One, I want to thank these teachers over at Realms Middle School for allowing me to be able to be a part of a privilege walk that they did with students there. It was great to be able to work with those students and see some of the things that they talked about during that conversation. Also, I want to thank some of the high schools for allowing me to come in and be able to continue to talk to them about leadership and different opportunities to be able to discuss with them the different various things going on. Mountain View, as well as Summit, Caldera. And like I said, it was great to be able to step into those schools and just work with those students. And then finally, I can't wait for a Husky victory this Saturday in Seattle. So go Dogs.
Quack. I have 3 appreciations. My first appreciation is to Nicole Van Eikern for arranging and supporting in the ask to have Senator Wyden come visit our schools. My second appreciation is for all of the students that are enrolled in the Sources of Strength program, where they are providing peer-to-peer support around mental health. And then my last appreciation is to Sarah Barclay and to Steve Heron. With those two, they are overseeing bargaining for BEA and for BLS while having other jobs, tending to membership needs on the BEI side and handling human resources for the district on the BLS side. That is an enormously challenging task, and I want to just really appreciate the time and care that they have both put into this. Our next meeting is a work session. It's scheduled for October 24th, and our next regular business meeting is scheduled for November 14th. With that said, this meeting is adjourned.